Boy, thank you, Lee. I really appreciate being asked to speak on this topic. Lee and Gene Tabeka, who I'll probably mention a few times during the talk, really set me up on this discussion as we see the industry changing a little bit. The last time I was here I've only been to Las Vegas twice. Once was in 1992, the other was in 98, both for Comdex. The one in 98 was the launch of Windows 3. It was obviously a little bit bigger product launch than we see today in our world, as so many things get launched virtually and so many things are available almost immediately. But on that note, we did have a couple announcements ourselves as a company this week around our Unlimited Edition and offering idea management. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about moving Agile beyond the software realm and what we've been seeing in the industry so far along. Just a little bit about me before we get to, oh my God, it didn't plug in my piece. A little bit about me before we talk about the subject, because it's probably good to know a little bit about the context. As Lee said, I was a director of product management at BEA. I was a director of IT in US West, which is now Quest Technologies. I've done 4 startups along the way and started working on Rally back in 2002. So since we started and hired Gene into our coaching part of our organization, we've been working with large enterprises really since about 2004, 2005 in helping them adopt Agile and scale it throughout their organizations. You can reach me on any of these kind of locations and follow Gene and I on our Agile blog at that location. In addition, I'm hoping that people who are online and people who are here in the audience will certainly open their laptops and open their cell phones and communicate those things that they think that are interesting in this whole talk. I'm certainly gotten kind of looped into this whole environment, and the feedback mechanism that comes out of this environment is something that's really changed since the last time I was here at Comdex, and why we've got about 2,000 people attending this conference virtually as opposed to everybody being here locally. Me, I live in Boulder, Colorado. I married a 5th-generation Coloradoan, and we can't live anywhere that she can't see cows. And so this is where I live. I'm a very place-oriented person. I came to the University of Colorado in '83, and I really haven't left there since. Hard to see some of these pictures in this room, but that's my son. He's on a run called Gus's Way at Crested Butte, and that is living the dream for me. I've got probably at least 7,000 hours of skiing in my clock on time, and seeing him ski is probably the greatest thing that I've been able to experience. From a vision standpoint, I work really hard on sustainability. I'm working really hard at home to try to make our home footprint zero. Obviously, trips in the airplane are tough, and so again, back to this concept of a virtual conference, it's a great thing for us to be able to do this, to share, kind of bright flares in the industry that are happening in geographies, but also to be able to share that with folks all around the world. That's something that's really changed since we've gotten started. It relates into our discussion here today about what's your vision for Agile? What's your company's vision when you think about why you're here, where you're at in your adoption? Take a minute to kind of think about that one. It may be very explicit in your organization. It may be very implicit. You may be just starting along the path, but where is it that you've got your kind of vision? I would make the point of view that it can't be your target. We've got a recent blog post on our website that was associated with goals and targets, and target goals can have some real negative impacts. Target goal would be, hey, I want to be able to run the mile in 4 minutes. That's a target goal. There's a lot of potential negative impacts of target goals, of not being able to reach them, creating demotivating concepts of not being able to celebrate along the way. And I would say the goal of Agile is not to be Agile. The goal of Agile and the concepts that people have adopted and been successful in scaling is something else. It may be to drive and realize revenue inside your organization. There may be a very business-oriented goal associated to trying to change what's the real mix in your business offering. It may be, in some organizations, to really beat a competitive situation to move from number 2 to number 1. In some organizations, you'll see it's more focused on Because you're a service part of the organization, you may not have direct customer facing, you don't ship product, but you provide IT services. It may be providing value much more quickly in the organization, being more aligned with your business partners and being able to get that value and flow out to the business much more effectively. It may be in some cases to change the world, to change the societal dynamics, to change some behaviors, to change the way we get energy. Those are all things that are much more capabilities that are measured at a business sense than they are germane into just how we do software development in our world. We look at it a lot in borrowing. I'm going to borrow a lot of models and a lot of concepts here, and they're all referenced in the back of this talk. The talk's available in PDF, I assume, on the website. If not, you can get it from us. I'll probably post it just on our blog site. This is Jim Collins' model of the story of good to great. If you haven't read the book, the main premise in it is a lot of people a lot of companies move through the life as their organization, really getting Bs. It's kind of like getting Bs in school, right? They just kind of coast along. They're good organizations. And the ones that have made the jump to being great organizations he's talked about, really moved up two continuums at once. And that is a continuum of a culture of discipline and the continuum of agility. And Gene and I and the other coaches in our organization have really come to believe that these things go hand in hand. And if you don't move them hand in hand together, you don't move up, you don't get agility. You don't get agility without discipline. And you don't get discipline without extra added agility. You can add a lot of discipline and get bureaucracy, but that doesn't cause you to be a great organization. So this is a journey. It's a path towards being great. It's a path to leading you to a place where you're better than a lot, best of the best. And it's a stair-step journey. It's incremental. It's like Agile. We don't get there overnight. We try to figure out reasonable bites that we can take along the way, and we take advantage of feedback and step our way through this. You see the three terms in the red boxes: flow, pull, innovator, concepts that we use to talk generically about the stages you might move through as the organization starts to pick up agility. And that'll find its way, weaving its way through my talk today. Another way to explain this is with a much better graphic than I think Jim Collins' graphic, and this would be a Kathy Sierra graphic. If you don't know Kathy Sierra, she doesn't blog as much as she used to, but she leads and edits the Head First books. And if you haven't seen any of the Head First books for visual learners, there is nothing better. And so this is her gift. Her gift is the blend of marketing and user education. And in this case, it's a story about how do you become an expert? What's that path? We know there's a lot of failed paths along the way. So, here's the path of, I'm not very good at this, I'm just going to quit. That is certainly no way to get Agile outside the development organization, is to give up. If it doesn't make it inside your development organization, the concept of you affecting the whole culture is certainly not going to work. The next path is the path to amateurism. And this is the path where you set Agile up as a target, right? I'm good enough, I'm just going to stay here, right? Agile's my goal, here's where I'm going to get to. I'm going to scale amateurism through the organization. Agile is just the next step on the fad world of project management, moving from what was RUP to now it's Agile. That's all it is. That's the surest way to end up as an amateur. Unfortunately, there's another side effect of being an amateur, and that is usually you end up falling back because you really didn't get to changing a lot of the skills, attitudes, beliefs, and guiding ideas inside of the organization. They're going to cause you to actually take more than incremental benefits out of agility in the form of better quality, in the forms of fast speed to market. The curve we're really talking about, again, like the Jim Collins curve, is the curve to expert. It's the curve to, I just keep getting better. It's a snowball rolling downhill concept. It's one of our customers, Christophe Louvion, who's in LA, talks at CitySearch, talks about an ability he's got now that I'm not sure if it's a gift or not, but I'm going to give it a gift title. And that is, he walks around saying, I just keep seeing waste everywhere. And I just can't stop getting rid of it. It's the sixth sense ability, like the boy who can see the dead folks in the movie, right? He's got a gift. He's on that green curve. That's the capabilities you're looking for. You're looking for the capabilities to stay on that path. Because the tenet of my talk is creating Agile or Agile beyond the software organization means something that you have to create that's individualistic to your organization. You can't put a cookie cutter answer on top of your business about here's what an agile organization looks like. You can adopt vanilla Scrum, you can adopt vanilla XP, you can adopt vanilla Kanban, but you're going to, as you move from being an amateur to being an intermediate and expert, you're going to customize that. You're going to learn the concepts of how you make things flow through your system, how you deliver value faster, and it's going to become yours. Businesses can only have 2, 3, maybe 5 key capabilities that really differentiate them in the marketplace. By being differentiated, they're almost always by definition different than a lot of others. So there is no answer here about what is the agile organization. I can tell you the path to how we're going to create it and what I see happening in the world and some of the things that you can do to bring everybody along, but I can't tell you what the answer is. I want to make sure that we don't get stuck, as Kathy says, at the sucks threshold. We suck, we give up. Hopefully you're here today or you're listening online because that's something you've already crossed over, or you're going to try to make sure your organization or your teams or your program doesn't make it. What I really want to get you over the top of is the kick-ass threshold. When things are going great, you're hiring great, you're firing well, you're getting people on the bus in the right places, you're building great software, and it's happiness for you, it's happiness for your customers, and it's happiness for your other stakeholders in your business. We talk about this process as a 5-step process. Again, thinking about what I showed you from Jim Collins, flow, pull, innovate, beginner, intermediate, expert. We've seen it adopted best from the bottom up. I've seen some flash cuts. All flash cuts that have worked have been preceded by successful team adoption. If you want to follow this path, the big step is step 3, and that is when you go beyond a couple of isolated pilots and you start getting programs out, programs that affect real business numbers, that affect real revenue, real competitive position in the marketplace, really start to change the world. Once you get up to that level, then you've figured out how it's starting to look inside your business, because you're bumping into upstream and downstream processes as far as funding, as far as business case development, as far as go-to-ops, validation and verification. Those are potentially outside your dev organization, and you're starting to figure out, what does it look like for us to get smooth flow across the whole business? What does it look like to be agile, not just in development, beyond the whole business? It can be a pretty long journey from the left-hand side to the right-hand side of this continuum. It can be measured in years, there's no question. As a result, you can't get there overnight. Setting yourselves up with target goals that you think you're going to be, quote, agile in 18 months is absolutely not the way to get there. Setting yourselves up with realistic step-by-step processes along the way with intermediate deliverables and successful celebrations is absolutely the way to stay on the green curve. There's 2 common failure patterns. That is, it's always the amateur one. That is, I get a team who's iterating pretty well, and I decide, there it is, that's agile. I'm going to scale that across the whole business. Everybody's going to iterate. Always the amateur. Well, maybe not always. You might fall back. And then the spot of, I'm going to do agile. My teams are going to kick ass, but I'm not going to stick my neck out. I'm going to be complacent about how we're going to do this across the organization. Chris Avery likes to call these agile ghettos. This is a mode of not working up in your organization to try to affect how your PMO process, your funding process, your stage gate process, your go-to-production process, how you train and enable customers, how you measure your business case successfully. All of those things, if you're just kind of saying, that's not my job, you're just as much on the failure path as the guys who scaled it as an incremental piece. Agile starts, at least, in this group, or in the domain of software, we start in the dev organization. We start with development and test, right? We start with vanilla Scrum. We start with one of these recipes as a beginner as to how we want to get going. And the models are pretty simple, right? That's the great thing about Agile. It's a lot more easy to understand than a lot of the big process models that we've seen in the past of trying to plan our way to a successful solution. But there's also the success model, and this is Eric Huddleston. He's one of our customers at Innovis. He describes this is his words on, I got the blue cog spinning real well. I got it spinning so well that I just shredded the gears on the other two. It's what I call the agile flywheel, and we just ate them for lunch. And I had to go back and fix all that because I didn't understand what was going to happen as a result of us being really successful at adopting agile processes inside our development organization. And so what Eric learned, and what I think we're seeing in a lot of cases in the marketplace, is the question is much more about what does it look like on the whole value stream? We're looking for life cycle economic profits across this whole value stream. We're not just looking for the cog, the blue cog, to spin so fast that we shred the upstream and downstream teams. That's not any more effective than just incrementally adopting. So the question about the agile organization becomes, what does it mean to extend the capabilities of agility out further into the organization so I can pick up feedback sooner, I can engage more people, I can get value out to customers, and I can take advantage of what are, in our industry, crazy, wicked payoff curves, right? There are some things we do in the software industry that have dramatic impacts. When you find those things and you get them to market faster, great things happen in your organization and for you as individuals. If you waste your time with the ones that are actually losers because for whatever reason they're the wrong customer, it's the wrong platform, it's the wrong piece of technology, it's actually the wrong problem, that's when you get lost on the path. So let's talk a little bit about how is it that we create this kind of lean flow of value, continuous flow across the organization, because it's not just about shipping working software faster. It's about solving the right business problem and getting it into the hands of users and actually having them get business benefit from it. Sure, Vanilla XP, Vanilla Scrum talk about it's all about the working increment. If you keep your domain and your blinders on to just the development environment, that's the way you look at it. If you look at it in the business sense and the goal of agility is to stay on the green curve, you'll look way beyond it. I'm going to talk about three concepts in here. One is the vision, or my pictures of what informs me about the Agile organization, the Agile social contract, and what I see some of the best organizations doing. These are words from the inside jacket cover of Don Reinertsen's book on product development flow, second generation concepts in lean product development. I think he does a great job on the inside jacket of kind of explaining this concept. It's a great book. It's not a read book. It's a reference book. There's 132 principles of attaining flow in your product development organization in that book. He starts off by, we as organizations in a lot of cases in the product development space are focused on cranking up our utilization. We do this and we follow and try to make sure that we conform to a plan and hit a date and a deliverable on a date. Whether that's a good deliverable or not, we're going to make sure we hit it. To do that, we're going to take a lot of the concepts out of the lean world and try to reduce variability in the whole system. And we're going to manage that with phases and gates. That's what they say out of one side of their mouth. And then on the other side of the mouth, almost everybody in the organization says, well, but what I'm really looking for here is and why am I talking about Agile is I'm trying to increase cycle time. I want to increase the life cycle profits of the work that we're doing and putting into users' hands so that we actually make money as an organization and are able to accomplish our purpose and goals. I want to increase innovation in the organization, and I want to increase speed. And these four things work diametrically almost opposed to the last four things. We've got a guiding idea set here in the models that are wrong. And when you're trying to get flow, these are the things we're all talking about. But they almost work almost diametrically opposed to conforming to the plan, driving variability out, which drives all innovation out, and putting stages and gates in the way when we're actually trying to get speed and cycle time. To me, it's a giant dichotomy, right? We're staring at these two or things. And ors, in a lot of cases, are a tough way to work. What we need to be able to do is open up the concept or the container associated with and. And so Gene and I spent a good part of last year writing on the topic of the Agile organization. That topic showed up on our blog, and so what you'll see on the bottom of our slides is all the work that we do is copyrighted under Creative Commons. Go ahead and use it, go ahead and share it, attribute it, but it's not something we own. That's our whole blog environment also. Everything else that's not mine in here is copyrighted, obviously, by the authors. So number 10 on our list was work-life balance and consistent delivery. In an agile organization, you manage that dichotomy. You get them both. You don't fully take all the benefits of agile and invest it in more delivery. You invest it in the people, as Joanna described, that create that thing for you on an ongoing basis. That if you saw Jean's talk earlier in the week on servant leadership, it might be this afternoon, but I think it was earlier in the week, it's servant and leader. It's sustainable, ongoing, as well as wildly successful. It contributes to the community, and it makes a profitable organization. It's both collaborative, but doesn't suffer from groupthink and is smart. It makes decisions both bottom up and top down. Nobody gets to advocate what's going on. We have to actually work together on these kinds of things because the data's on the feet on the street, but the larger view of the competitive context or market context is probably at the top. That you need personal flexibility to be able to run and maintain a life balance that you can actually do, but you also have to have the rhythm in the organization to be able to keep things on a constant cadence and understand where you're at. That you can go, that you actually have quality and go faster, not slow down to do that. That you create your own realities, but you also work on creating and have a corporate vision. And finally, that the commitment to be great is back to what we were talking about before with Jim Collins, and that is around creating a discipline of culture and metrics. So that's all written on our blog. There's a whole bunch of videos in that regard. That, to me, is a little bit of a vision of the dichotomy that Don sets up of trying to create what I think is, a container that holds both. It's the art of the possible. It's and, right? It's in Jim Collins' world of, what is your vision for your organization? It's that space right there in the middle, where the intersection between your passion as an organization, what you're best in the world at, and what your flywheel of value delivers, where you can make money at, where you can sustain your organization. It's the center there. It's the intersection of all three. When we talk in the notion of trying to bring flow into organizations outside just the dev organization, we typically go to value stream analysis as one of the first things that goes on. We've done a number of efforts inside of our organization and do that with customers that we consult with. There's a talk from, it's not on this one, it's actually on the next slide, from a gentleman at the Lean Enterprise Institute on this concept. And when you do value stream analysis, it's easy to find those non-value added tasks. It's easy to find things where there's hidden cues in the system and start to remove them. But one of the great exercises in value stream analysis is being able to step back from the model and look at what's the system patterns that are causing us to behave this way? What are those unanswered, unquestioned assumptions? As most people would say, it's not the things that you don't know that'll kill you. It's the things that you know that are wrong. And in a lot of cases, what you see when you start to look across these big value streams, there's some crazy assumptions that got put in the model about 10 years ago when the technology was different, when there was no such thing as social media, when we didn't have cloud computing, when we didn't have powerful mobile devices, when we couldn't do flat organizations, etc. That's one of the huge values in being, in order to, as a result of doing value stream analysis, that allows you to start questioning and looking at what's keeping you from doing Agile across your entire organization. Again, it's from Jim Luckman here down in the bottom corner, who does this talk on the hidden rules of lean transformations. He's got in here this notion of it's the organizations that take it for, on the left, the blanket solutions, and don't take a critical approach to being able to step back and ask and get to the root cause of a lot of things that are destined to take one of the two failure patterns that I talked about earlier. They're destined to just say, oh, look, that Agile Scrum thing is a blanket solution. We can just apply it everywhere in a vanilla case setting, and it's going to work. I hope everybody in this organization, in this room and online, realizes that it's a great place to start, but there are a lot of different difficulties along the way, and there's a lot of nuances in all businesses, and it really takes an approach that's illustrated on the right-hand side of the screen to be able to really understand what problems we're solving and to really think critically about what we're doing. or you can just apply it kind of aimlessly. So I hope those reinforce the concept of this is my vision, or what we see in trying to create an agile organization is this space where you can hold on to these dichotomies and be able to create something that is unique to your business. When we go in and start looking at those value stream processes and trying to understand what's going on, we use a number of the capabilities that we find in the Lean Enterprise Institute. This is a book called Learning to See. It's a great set of tools for being able to do value stream analysis. It's a workbook for you to be able to use in your company. It's really not hard, and it really doesn't take a long time at all. When you get into those kinds of things, again, you see when you start to do some of that analysis, you'll see what is actual calendar time, what's wait time in the queues that build up, and where the value added time is. And you'll find out that in there, it's not there's some one giant queue that you can go get rid of. It's actually, there's a lot of little wasted pieces all the way along the way that makes this calendar time process that's, shows up as 8 months, I think, but the value added time was only a month and 10 days. Why can't we just get this down to a month and 10-day process? You can't get it down there overnight. You've got to get it down there, again, by incrementally kind of chipping away at those queues. When you take that approach of looking at why and an incremental approach, you really get the feedback from this kind of analysis that gives you really the confidence to have a perspective or a guiding idea that is, this is really possible. I can see the waste. I am like Christophe Louvion. I see the waste in our organization. I see how we're going to make a huge difference in here, and I see how we can get it to it incrementally over time. This is one of the key tools, I think, to being able to find your way to what does it look like to bring Agile outside your development organization and to really solve the whole value stream. It's the approach that, as Joanna was talking about in the last keynote, of obviously the folks in facilities who in a lot of times get in the way. Facilities is an easy one because we can actually see it, right? And our organization and others have picked up a lot of the Scrum team or project team room concepts, really located people in the right places, and have really created facilities that we want, right? The CEO of our company and I have been working together in the software industry for 20 years. We don't let that kind of stuff happen. There's a picture of Menlo Innovations in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where I was at on Tuesday. They don't let that get in the way. That's the art of the possible. You can create that even in a place that has a complete cube farms right now. This is a picture in our organization. That's actually 3 dev teams. It's really hard to see in this world. But those are the types of environments that create the success inside of your product development organizations that create an infectious snowball rolling downhill that allow you to create the Agile organization. We've noticed a lot inside of the last 6 years of both rolling our product out to large customers and small customers, as well as doing coaching and Agile transformation work, that the vanilla models of Scrum and Kanban and XP are great places to start. But there's some laws of physics behind what's going on inside of the organizations to get flow that we've really reached out into the Lean community to educate us. Obviously, the work that started back in the 50s with Deming has been well informed over the last 50 to 60 years and has created some real amazing pieces of work that can allow you to figure out how to extend this further, how to be an expert, and how to move it downstream. That's Don Reinerson's book on the left, Michael Kennedy's book on the right. Michael's is a novel, Don's is a reference piece, 2 very important books in this concept. And they're informing us and informing our customers about, well, what's next and how do we actually get here? Because a lot of our customers start with this kind of a picture. This is their systems release diagram and their phase and gate model for how they're going to work through their waterfall cycle, one single pass on development for getting out a product in an 18 to 24-month cycle. That creates large batches. Large batches are painful. Why are large batches painful? You can't see the yellow line very well. This is from Mary and Tom Poppendiek. Is that we know from simple network queuing theory that when you increase the batch size, that you increase the amount of friction in the pipe or in the flow of things that are going on. In addition, when you crank up the utilization, you increase the amount of friction. In fact, those two things work with each other to create what can be really a complete grinding of all gears to a complete stop when you push large batches through at 100% utilization. That's what the diagram's showing you with the power curve tail at the end of this piece. The simple answer is don't do this. Why don't you do this? Because that friction slows you down to a grinding halt, right? So what's the first thing you can do? One of the first things that we end up doing with a lot of teams is when you start your allocation and sprint planning in Scrum, that you start with a 60% availability time. Some people's hair goes on fire. Oh my God, this only 60% availability. What are they going to do with all that wasted time? What wasted time? We didn't lose any time. We just didn't overstuff the pipe with way more than it could carry. Things come out the pipe a lot faster when you're only 60% allocated, even with small batches of 2-week sprints. It's a great place to start as a rule of thumb. The other piece you can work on is getting your batch size down. This is why the generic model of Scrum works, is it puts you down into 2 or 4 week batch size, which is dramatically smaller than the 18 or 24 months batch size that we got on the first slide. And when we actually drop the batch sizes, what we end up doing is we end up dropping the queues that are building up inside the process and up and downstream in the process, and those queues are where all the time's wasted. It's the non-value added time of things sitting around in the handoff process. They're invisible. It's really hard to see them. I got all this work in process that's ready for QA, but QA can't test it right now because they're doing a validation and verification on a handset change in a different environment, and so you're going to have to wait. That's hidden. Well, I feel like I'm done. I did my stuff. I'm just going to hand my task off. We are so great. Our Agile team is just killing it. And there's just a pile of stuff sitting in front of the validation and verification team. What good did that do? You guys feel good, but you just shredded the gears on the team down the stream. So in those queues is the biggest source of economic waste you've got in your process. Getting rid of those things is where you get all the big bang from Agile. We get 50% faster time to market and 25% productivity based on studies by QSMA associates on Agile teams in comparison to other teams. You get it because you get rid of those big nasty queues. If you switch over into the Kanban environment, the way they limit the batch size is by limiting the work in process that's going on. They don't lock you to specific cadence. They limit how much is in any one state of the process as it moves through the system. Again, just a tool or a principle for how to make the batch size smaller. And when you do that, you end up following continuous flow diagrams to watch the work, not the people. Who cares about the utilization? Do you think the people in your organization aren't skilled, don't want to deliver good working software, don't want to be on great teams, and actually don't want a bonus? No, they're just constrained by the economic queues that are, the waste that's stuck in the queues upstream and downstream in the process. They're not wasting time. If you just watch where the work's at and are able to follow that through the system in a smooth flow, you know that things are running great. When you do that really effectively, you get to benefit from the information models that are available from rapid feedback. And this is back to the payoff curves in our industry. The payoff curves are like option pricing theory. Some of them are just wicked, amazing. They make companies like Google and others just go through the roof. When you find one of those, what do you do to that? You double down, and you keep doubling down all the time. The complaint of Google is it makes all of its money from AdWords. Yeah. They doubled down and kept doubling down because it works, and it funded the development of the whole rest of the business that's now coming along behind it. If on the other side, if you've got feedback that's this is a loser, you need to stop doing it. If you don't stop and get the feedback, you can't benefit from the information and make smarter decisions and get the things that are wasting your time out of the flow and double down on the things that are actually adding value. Hence the cadence model of Scrum. It forces you to stop, pick your head up, do a demo and review, retrospect on what's working, and figure out if you should stop doing something. It may be what you thought was the biggest feature required in the product, and you found out the users don't use it. They use this other little thing, and it gives them 80% more value. Great, let's get the other little thing out a lot faster. And maybe we can polish the edges on that so that it's really facile and really works well. And maybe we can really differentiate ourselves in the market and actually change the whole AdWords space. Those things are starting to form the concepts of how do you get flow across the entire organization. That's the physics of why all this stuff works. It's the place to go look for ideas. It's the place to go look for proof points. It's the place to go look for when I get to a place where, hey, Scrum's not really working for this team really well. This cadence thing seems kind of artificial. How would I pick up different ways of managing queues, of getting flexible workforces, of managing batch sizes? I could go into and look at some of the other things that work. I might pick up Kanban. So that's the first concept for me about the Agile organization. A little bit of a vision, what informs my vision, what's informing some of our largest customers' visions. And it's things that the principle is the same, the patterns are the same. Some of the things that worked at Toyota are definitely the same. But where you apply them in your organization seems to vary pretty dramatically. So the second step for me is on the Agile social contract. I'm going to take a little different approach in this one. And these are kind of the anti-patterns, right? Is that I've got some culture that says, it doesn't support change. Some reason we haven't changed in a long time, and therefore this is a big deal, this whole change concept. That's a real tendency for the organization to revert back to form. As I said, we make an incremental movement with Agile, but we don't really continue the pressure, continue expanding it, continue extending it, and then we kind of revert back to form. The other failure pattern is we take a lot of the wins from this 52% faster to market, and what do? We invest that in less people. Well, we take the savings right to the bottom line. And when you do that, the snowball stops rolling downhill because you stop investing in the infrastructure necessary to get going. These are the patterns that you need to break in some fashion in a lot of organizations. The last one is this one of, I just need it's all about the immediate results. And there are great ways to get immediate results with Agile, but you can get drunk and almost addicted to this immediate results feedback loop. It was Israel Gott, who now works at Qatar, who was at BMC, one of Gene and I's probably largest first customer back in 2004, that really showed me the way in this regard about how to create what he calls, and is well written up on his blog at the Agile Executive, this social contract about how to bring everybody along, about how to answer the question of what's in it for me. And when you answer that question for everybody on the organization, these anti-patterns can get broken and we can kind of push through this whole thing. What another person that informs a lot of my thinking in this area, and somebody that we use for internal training and coaching of our managers, is Christopher Avery. Christopher Avery has a whole concept around taking responsibility that says, I start with intention, and then once I state that intention of what I'm trying to accomplish as an individual, I then suddenly have awareness about, now that I've said that and I've put the hat on of what I'm trying to make as a change in the organization, I can see all the things, I can see all the debt, I can see all the waste. And then it's up to me to confront them. And when you take that approach as a leader or somebody who's going to be championing how Agile moves and scales in your organization, you have what Esther Derby told me is not actually her quote, but comes from another book. I can't remember what that was. She might tweet that. But it's a notion that the behavior in an organization is a function of the people and the environment. And in most organizations, the people are just fine. We've got people with 5,000 hours of expertise in our domain. We've got people who've been working here and understand our customers inside and out. It's the environment in a lot of cases that's getting in the way. And what we're really trying to change in these, even as Joanna talked in this in this last set, was the environment that allows us to create this kind of an organization. So how is it that we have the intention to be able to see what we want and then confront those issues? To me, it's what Peter Singhi talks about in actively managing, he calls it the domain of action. What infrastructure are we working on? What infrastructure are we changing, both organizationally and technically, that's going to enable us to change? What tools, techniques, and processes are we changing that are going to work together with some changes in guiding ideas that's actually going to move the group from state A to state B? And when you move them to state B, it's going to affect a whole nother loop about the awareness and sensibility and key skills of the organization that's going to allow you to keep moving on. Actively identifying those things that you're moving, I mean, the difference between a big batch waterfall process and a Scrum process is really easy to pull out what's different in that model. And being very intentional about that allows you to confront those things. It allows you to state a vision of what is A and what's B, not B 7 years from now, but B 6 to 8 months from now. What's a roadmap to get there? We typically don't manage agile transformations any more than 6 months out. And we have a kind of a detailed plan or a backlog of transition stuff for the next 90 days at most. But we communicate that roadmap and we state a commitment and an intention that we're going to get there. And then we have a social contract with the organization that says, here's what's in it for you. I'm going to paraphrase Israel's. I can't do it justice by any stretch of the imagination. He was in a situation with their team at BMC that was backed up against the wall. He basically said, I can't guarantee employment. I can't guarantee you we won't outsource your jobs to India. But I can guarantee you that what I'm going to do is I'm going to invest in some of the best consultants and some of the best training to bring you Agile inside of your organization. And if you follow me on this roadmap, we're going to make some real progress and we'll have an opportunity to figure out what's next. And that brought everybody along at a pace I've never seen before in my life. That's the Agile social contract to me. That's the piece that gets full participation. And when you get full participation, you can create the vision that you wanted before. You can get all the players working together, standing up at the wall, planning your next releases, and having immense buy-in as to what we're trying to solve and what's the most important thing to do and to collaborate and build the trust that Joanna talked about before. Because that is really the critical question. Is you got to get them all standing up at the wall, planning and working together to build the trust if you're going to move down the path that we're talking about. And you're not going to get there if you're just going to follow the next set of concepts around, hey, yeah, I really want to go Agile, here's the check. That's not going to do it. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to write out the Agile transition plan for the next 2 years, and here's where we're going to be, and it's going to be called Agile in 2 years. That's not the way to do it. And that we're going to put up a team over here that really has no authority to change what's going on and deal with the 2 upstream and downstream or the 3 teams or the funding organization or the capitalization structure that we're going to shred the gears on as we try to move agility and push out working software at a pace that nobody's ever seen inside the organization. Those things don't work. You have to take a strategy. This is a model, again, out of Peter Singe's book. On the bottom left, the 2 strategies are pretty simple, right? It's the Jack Welch thing. We're either going to be number 1 or number 2 in the marketplace, or we're going to get rid of that line of business. That's a telling strategy. You see a lot of people take a selling strategy. Here's what's great about it. Here's why you want to buy it. Here's why you want to get on board. I would say Agile adoptions don't work very effectively unless you have a social contract that can drag people along in a way that they're actually dragging you along. And that is through co-creating, through consulting with them, or through actually taking an approach of testing. And that takes a servant leader that says, I can serve and help facilitate where you're going, and I'm going to be an active part of what's going on in this. And you need to find that person and engage them and get them sucked into what you're doing and tell them, all the credit we're going to make and all the great success we're going to make along the way, we're going to make as a team, and we're all in this together. And that's how you create that structure. And when you get that, you get leaders who actually can go out and remove the impediments that are in your way, that they can question the unanswered assumptions that are in your business and be able to move them out of your way for you. And then they can clean up the messes that you're going to make along the way. If you don't have that, you're going to get tripped up by every roadblock and every pothole along the way. You need that person. So if you're that great Agile team that's kicking butt and hasn't stuck their head up to find this leader, you need to find them. It's as much your responsibility as it is that leader's responsibility. But if they haven't been identified yet, you're going to be stuck in an Agile ghetto. So to me, that's the second part of it is I've got a vision, I know where I'm going, but now I need a plan and a roadmap, and I need commitment, and I need buy-in, and I need to get everybody participating to move this along. That, to me, is the second critical piece of creating the Agile organization. So what are some of the best folks doing? What do I see out on the marketplace that sets the people that have started and that are really got the snowball rolling downhill apart from those people that are struggling and kind of bumping along? They've avoided the command and control structure. It's not something that you shall do it. That piece, even when that was hoisted upon them, they pushed back on that and used that as an opportunity to try to create the collaboration that we're talking about and the full participation and buy-in. The folks have really questioned, as you see Esther talking a lot about, you see Joanna talking a bit about it, the traditional performance appraisal concept that really creates some really negative individual incentives that totally knock the drive out of people in our industry that are well paid and well compensated. But as soon as you create an inequity in the organization, but in the compensation models, you create a totally negative incentive to play. And questioning some of those and trying to break up some of those and create the team-oriented concepts are some of the things that we see some of the best doing. We see organizations that take the PMO, Project Management Office shells, right, of here's what I'm going to do to make sure there's control in the system and that we can form the plan. And they're turning those concepts in a couple of different ways between changing the PMO structure, reallocating the PMO people more down into teams, having their own programs, some of them becoming Uber Scrum Masters, et cetera. And they've created organizations that are now much more focused on creating the kinds of behaviors and the environment in which burning visibility, short feedback loops, small batches all start to work. That's what I see changing at the PMO level. And what does that do? It causes alignment and initiative because everybody's working towards the same thing. Alignment and initiative are a lot easier if there's really one thing to align around as opposed to four. The concepts of what's the number one goal for the year for the corporation? How does that ripple down into our program, into our teams? What can I do to support that? If my team is not on the forefront of the point of the spear of what we're trying to do this year, then I might be doing a supporting role that says keeping the project that I'm working on well in bounds, well managed, the simplest possible things so that we're able to divert as much resource, as much time, as much infrastructure towards that thing that's at the point of the arrow. That's how I can help in that regard. So going back to those best folks and looking at what they're doing about how to work through this whole process is that the first thing they're trying to do that I recognize is they're taking a real strategic execution approach to what's going on, a real focused, a real thematic, a number one theme of the year concept. This is Ben Carey. He's one of our coaches. He's based in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. Ben is a voracious reader and completely interested in the design space, and like a number of our coaches, just keeps the information flowing inside of our organization and the ideas moving. He turned me on to Pascal's book, which again is out of the Lean Enterprise Institute, and it's about getting the right things done. It is not a read book, it is a workbook. We've used it now a couple of times in our organization to walk through it chapter by chapter with new teams to figure out, here's what we're going to do first, here's what we're going to do second, and basically chapter by chapter work through this thing. Wonderful piece of, at any level in the organization. Pascal gives some great examples in here. It's got all kinds of fold-out charts and all kinds of templates and works great. So what does he talk about? He talks about the notion of true north. Talks about what is the compass heading for the company, for the business right now this year? The one. What is the one thing we're all working on? I don't know how many people in the audience could say, oh, this is the one thing the company is working on this year. This is the one thing we have to get right, no matter what. And I know how I'm contributing to that. When you get that right, boy, does a lot of other things start to flow easy. When you get that right, we tend to create a set of metrics. We've got about 4 metrics in our organization right now that are driving and supporting. Some of them are target, but they're intermediate target metrics. They're targets for the year, but a couple of them are real capability metrics for us. And it's us trying to figure out how would we know that we could celebrate that we accomplished our true north goal. And then what are the 3 strategies we have that we're going to play out through the year? Some accentuated more in other quarters than others. Some maybe we double down on because they're working so well that we accomplish our True North goal with all of our wood behind one strategy, and we decide to do that in Q2 or Q3. But 3 strategies that are working to support what we're trying to get done. It's real easy for me to see that an agile adoption strategy can be one of those mother strategies for what you're doing. Absolutely. We use lean concepts and agile concepts in various parts of our business all the time as one of them. This year, one of our strategies is about actually getting a lot of the business lean. And that's supporting what our True North piece is. The second part of what Pascal talks about is a move beyond the notions in Scrum that are just amazingly valuable. And Joanne and others and Esther and Diana have written books around retrospectives, and Jean about the topics of how do I learn from retrospective, right? But in what Pascal does and what we see applied in the lean environment is the next step to that. And this is more discipline on the concept of learning and retrospecting, and that is putting in the check cycle. And the check cycle, this only happens when you have the metrics at the beginning of the year to know how you're going to assess if we made where we're going. And when we measure our success against those things, we can adjust our strategies along the way and figure out those things that are not adding value towards those metrics. But if we don't have those metrics at the beginning, when we do the planning cycle, there's no way for us to check. And we're just kind of, it's not like running rudderless throughout the sea, but it's like putting the rudder over here and then kind of over there. And before you know, you're kind of slipping along. And with Agile, you know, you have that concept of, since we're checking in all the time and we're making adjustments, it's really easy to kind of bend off the course if you don't have if you don't have a compass pointing you along the way. And so for Agile teams, this True North concept is even more important than I see in the command and control environment, because in the command and control environments, they probably have a vision of what's in their head, and they're steering all these rudders throughout the organization all the time. When the accountability and the measurements come down in the organization to the people who are right on the street, the True North concept has got to come and become really part of what's driving you. It's a process of working through what is the problem, what's the current situation, what's our plan for getting through that piece, usually on a year basis. Sometimes we do these on a quarterly basis. What are we going to do? How are we going to check that? And then when we do come back and check against that, how do we reinstitute this cycle over and over again? And this nomenclature and discipline has become a real critical part, not just in our development organization of about 60, but in the upstream and downstream financing, finance especially, operations, coaching, customer service parts of our business, to be able to make sure we make our corporate goals on a yearly basis. When we do that, I think you start to get the concept of what an agile organization looks like. You start to identify the cycles down at the team level and at the product or department and the quarterly business cycles. And you have PDCA cycles at all those levels. Some of them may be more disciplined and more all-inclusive because the teams are bigger, but you start to see this notion of PDCA running throughout the entire business. And that starts to create a business that's very intentional about where they're going, has a lot of awareness about what's happening along the way, and will confront the issues along the way and fix them. So the second piece of what's going on and what do I see in the best is they prioritize work better. There's a lot of work to do in Agile, and we talk a lot about the cadence. We talk a lot about the notions of smaller batch sizes, of feedback on what's going on. But you can't get around the picture that's been shown 100 times. I like this visualization better, but you know, what percentage of software do we use frequently? That's a stunning number, huh? What is it that we use occasionally? 14. And what is it that we use rarely, if never? 64. Where's the biggest lever you've got in changing the impact of your organization and causing the whole organization to do a whole lot less? Getting rid of the red part of this flag. Most Agile teams give this a lot of lip service, but haven't figured out how to move up into the fuzzy front end of the system. Now, in a lot of Agile adoptions, the fuzzy front end is a long way away from where the value gets delivered out to the customers. So if you're looking for short-term wins, you're trying to prove success in a team, the places to work is in the back end, right? The relationship from dev to QA to ops. Because if you fix some pieces down here in the back end of the value stream, you're going to see immediate benefits ripple out of the business real quickly. That'll start your snowball rolling downhill absolutely quickly. We know there's a ton of wins to get there, and we know there's a ton to invest in that space. But the big winner's up on the front side. And the teams that are really working hard to really figure out how to go a whole heck of a lot faster are figuring out how not to do the 64% of the stuff that is not only waste, it's waste compounded over time that you have to carry around and bug fix and figure out how to rip out of customers' hands because there's still 2 customers that are using it. So a couple of strategies. Mike, obviously, Cohn's done a lot of pieces in the estimating world, his Agile estimating projects and theme-based screening, as he's talked about, and building up, again, a concept of how does this theme work? How do these requirements compare to that theme? How do I bubble up the right ones? How to get rid of the other ones? Really common model to at least get started with. Simple analytics, but it requires then a notion of kind of true north. What is the theme? It really requires that notion. If you're familiar with Kano analysis from the 1980s about things that make delighters and depressors, I forget what the other side of that is, that model is well described on the internet for people who are producing actual product that run in customers' hands that gets measured by usage and gets measured by dollars. Product analysis in Kano is a really effective set of tools. If you're in the IT space and you're trying to measure out portfolios or you have a large product portfolio, some of the stuff Neil Nicholson's been doing at his locations, headwaters.com, the book that he wrote with others, including Pollyanna and Stand Up and Deliver, has a model here that says, hey, the traditional model for how we calculate what business cases or what projects get done is based on cost and benefit analysis of giving some ROI. But I think we all know in this room, and if anybody who's worked in a service relationship in IT, that the way this actually happens is we calculate the number on the left, we figure out what the IRR is, and then we go estimate and guess at the other two. Because we don't put the actual analysis into figuring out what's going on. And a lot of things slip through the prioritization environment. Once they're in, we never kill them. So it creates a huge source of bottlenecks and contention at key resources along our whole development stream. So people who are doing this better, I think, are going to a place, again, back to core purpose. What is it we're trying to accomplish this year? How does this actually achieve that core purpose? We're going to do some cost-benefit analysis, you bet, but we're also going to take into account other considerations in the business. And when you start to get that kind of a picture, those other considerations tend to have the picture of what's market differentiating versus what's mission critical. And what projects are up in that upper left-hand teams, and let's give those projects to our best teams. Because our best teams have proven their ability to deliver and get things out the door effectively and get them out with quality and speed. And the other things, let's figure out maybe how to partner to do this, how to OEM those kinds of things, how to not do the things in the bottom left-hand corner. That type of priority portfolio prioritization done upstream can cut your backlog in half almost instantaneously. And when your backlog gets cut in half, you can lighten your utilization back to 60% pretty easily and make the math equation that says this stuff's going to come out no problem this year. Well, I'm not going to commit to you the date. I'm going to commit to you that we're going to work on these key things first and move them through our agile development cycle in a lot better speed, move them through into our ops, into our user training and education and customer or employee enablement, and then measure their usage and figure out how is this model working, and let's make this model better and better all the time. And when we start making this better and better all the time, we start eating away at that 64% of that flag, and it keeps our snowball rolling downhill and keeps us right on that green curve that Kathy Sierra was talking about. The best ones are trying to figure out what Don Reinertsen calls cost of delay, because there are natural contentions that happen along the process of having a fairly large organization and multiple things trying to move through different stages or different key resources in the process. And when they do run into contention, are you asking the question, okay, great, there's that thing that's this handset validation that's going on, and it's going to take 2 more weeks, and we've got 2 weeks into it, and so everything else is stuck behind it. But here comes along something that's now has a cost of delay based on when it ships to the market that we can measure, and it's calculated in 7 digits. Smart teams are saying, pull the handset validation out of the QA teams, put it on the shelf, and get the darn thing through the bottleneck right now, because we can measure the cost of what the economic profits that we're losing because we're letting something that's important but not mission critical bottleneck up our entire process. And when people are figuring that out, they're figuring out how to dynamically readjust the flow inside of their organization based on changing market needs and feedback, and they're really humming. And not only are they not shipping the red stuff that's the 64% that nobody's going to use because they're killing it early in the process, but they're learning where the real payoff curves are that in our business make huge winners, and they're doubling down on those kinds of things. When you do that kind of stuff, you're creating a culture of innovation. You're creating something that is going to put in lots of things that we can learn quickly, that we can afford to fail at real fast, that can get us a lot of information about the market, about the technology, about our key customers and what they'll pay for and what we're real passionate about, and we can learn a lot faster. We know that kids are built to learn. Of course, I got a 7-year-old and the guy just sucks it up. As far as I know, all of his little neurons are open for just about anything, and he's learning at a speed that makes me feel dumb. But it's because we don't learn that way. We learn from actually being contemplative. We have to sit down and we've got to take the time to be able to actually reflect. It's like we've got to get away from Twitter. You've got to get away from email. You've got to set the urgent and the current stuff that's burning on your plate aside and work as a team and really figure out, what did we learn from that? Should we kill that or not? Those take adults some time to contemplate and work, and that's why collaboration is just so darn critical in this space. And why pairing works so well is that the pair can really help you get into that space to reflect. It's the key, obviously, to self-organizing teams. It's the key to being able to figure out group learning and collaboration, and those are the things that make us smarter. The inspect and adapt process that we have in Agile that is core to Scrum works great. But it's the PDCA cycle, when you add the metrics and the check, when you're working at a more strategic level, at a program level or higher in the organization, that really drives home the discipline of being able to adjust, because you've got something to reflect on. Did we or did we not make those metrics? Those metrics don't have to be dollar metrics. They can be measured in team satisfaction, customer satisfaction, turnover, et cetera. But did we make those metrics? Are we getting smarter? Or are we just kind of going through the paces? So back to learning faster, another one of Michael Kennedy's books, and then another LEI book on how do you pick this up inside of an organization? How do you bring this culture of innovation inside the organization? How do you work on multiple sets of options in parallel and know how to whittle through them and not make point-based decisions real early in the design process? I know from writing requirements for years as a director of product management, having 9 product managers work for me, as soon as you get below the user story level, you're doing design. And if you're a single product manager or business analyst way up front in the process, you're starting to design and build the concrete and the rebar in that system way before anything else is understood. This is why we don't let user stories go below the level that they're at. Those concepts of being able to stay high enough, being able to consider various alternatives, being able to structure well-formed tests that you can afford to fail at are critical for being able to accelerate the learning process inside the organization. We do this, and we add some discipline in our organization using a concept called A3s, or problem sheets. On the left-hand side of an A3 is a definition of the problem. It includes a root cause analysis, and it includes all the facts and data that says you really know what problem you're trying to solve. And on the right-hand side is a list of potential countermeasures that the team brainstorms up and then evaluates based on feasibility and effectiveness, and then we start testing them to figure out what's going to work. I really wish they'd done this on the big oil spill in the Gulf. I'm not sure they did. when you have a whole list of countermeasures, you can understand the consequences of taking a single one of those countermeasures and what can happen if it fails. Is that countermeasure something we can afford to fail at? If it's not, let's not do it first. What are some things we could do along the way, like siphoning off the oil like we're doing right now, that could have been done very easily with no negative implications on the entire system? Why wouldn't we do those first and at least start chipping away at the problem as we're trying to try all kinds of experiments and open up our creativity to all kinds of avenues, including customer idea voting, asking experts, opening it up to the internet, having competitions to figure out real ways to solve what is a hairy, complex problem? Clearly, they didn't do that. When you do these kind of exercises, you take some real time to analyze what are the implications of making step-based decisions along the way. And when you do that, you question your notions of ideal and failure and what's efficiency and what's leadership in the model start to change. Your guiding ideas, as we mentioned earlier, start to get moved. You start to build an aesthetic in your organization about what's good design. What does it look like to be great? How do the polished edges need to look in your organization? Those start to be your definitions of ideal. They start to be the definitions of how effective do we learn. We start to worry about building products that users can't screw up at. They can't put the wrong port, the wrong cable in the wrong port because we make sure they don't. They can't take the wrong pills because it's written in a level that anybody can see without their glasses on, and the colored rings tell us whose pill it is or when to take it, AM or PM. We start to mistake-proof what we're working on. That is a culture of innovation that, to me, is the key to really being an expert and really kicking ass. And that's the goal and the capabilities that we're looking for in our organization. And that's, I think, the real opportunity of an agile organization, is to be able to understand that and reinforce that. And you see a number of organizations in the world today that are trying to do that. So when we go back to the notion of what is it that it creates an agile organization, it's an organization that can hold this container and the dichotomies of and together and keep them and allow people to live with that ambiguity. It's an organization that says we're going to get on the green curve and stay there. It's an organization that says we're not going to get there overnight, but we're all going to get there together, and this is what it's going to mean for all of us. And when we do get there, it's going to be a great thing. And we're going to celebrate every step along the way because we want to keep that snowball rolling downhill. For you, I would talk about extending what you're doing today, making sure that it's going outside your teams, making sure it's going up to the program levels, making sure that you're starting to talk to the upstream and downstream teams in your organization, and that you're starting to do value stream analysis to understand what are some of the unquestioned assumptions that are inside your organization that if you flip, your snowball just picks up speed all that much faster. And I think if you do that, you're going to see some pretty interesting benefits. We see some organizations call it fires. There's agile fires kind of burning all over the place. You get a very viral adoption because you've set up the infrastructure, you've set up the way to work, the tools and techniques, the guiding ideas that allows it to spread by itself. That is really fun. It's a little scary, but if you've got the right, again, tools and techniques, you got the right organizational and technical infrastructure, when it happens, the snowball just keeps getting bigger. And when that happens, you and your team, you know you're doing everything you can to make your organization agile. Your stakeholders and your users are starting to have this kind of a picture as opposed to the, yeah, I'm sorry about that last release. And all your stakeholders, as far as employees, as far as your community members, as far as the end users, have got that picture on it. And when you can do that, I think we can move beyond what most people think of as lean, and beyond what Toyota defines as lean, is to something that's lean and agile for knowledge workers in our industry that can create some great things and hopefully avoid some real disasters in our complex world. Really appreciate your time. I hope this was helpful. All the references for what I did are available on the PDF slides, and I think we got about 2 minutes for questions. Sorry I went a little long. Thank you. You need a mic. If you got questions, you need to go to one of the boom mics.
Just one question.
Yeah, Lee's got one right here.
No, we have time for one.
Oh, okay, just one question. So who's going to be the lucky one? Oh, there we go. He's got his hand up. He's going for the boom.
It's a simple question. Where are you going to post the PDF? Sorry, maybe I missed that part.
I post the PDF. I assume that goes off the SQE website and the conference website. I'm not responsible for that, but I know these guys are pros, and they will make it happen.